Jah Rastafari. It's a Judah rule the heart, you know. When you speak of Rastafari, touch the heart. Is to stand up and talk for my rights. I know what that is. See? And I don't care who the guy is. Because my right is my right, like my life. You know? All I have is my life. Oh, take my soul and suss me out.
Though Bob Marley has sold some 300 million records, the world's first reggae superstar faced violence, assassination, and exile. He became the spokesman for Jamaica, his tiny Caribbean island, buffeted by global politics and domestic strife.
He could be the most dangerous man, he could be on the most wanted list. Music was his weapon, music was his M16, his guitar was his weapon that each time he gets that way, he was able to express bang, bang, bang.
He was like a verbal newspaper for those who couldn't read and didn't know what was going on in the government in Jamaica and the world.
He had never had a family life or just rooted to one person. He grew up here, there, everywhere. His mother a little bit, not his father at all. No one person that he was ever close to for his entire life.
I think the measure of the impact of Bob's career on the world can be seen by the extraordinary attention paid to him at the turning of the millennium. The New York Times called Bob the most influential artist of the second half of the 20th century. His song One Love was chosen as the anthem of the millennium by the BBC. Perhaps the most important honor, though, and most unexpected honor, came from Time magazine, which chose Exodus as the best album of the 20th century. And remarks like those of Jack Healy, the president of Amnesty International, who said that everywhere he goes in the world today, Bob Marley is the symbol of freedom.
In the euphoria of independence, music became the mouthpiece for young Jamaicans like the teenage Bob Marley. It was their way of breaking with the colonial past.
What Bob expressed, that confidence, I suppose at some point you could say an arrogance against the establishment. What Bob expressed was quite widespread among young people in Jamaica.
Bob's first commercial recording embodied that cheerful sense of rebellion in the new Jamaican rhythm called ska.
Now, Bob's particular expression of it has to be explained, I think, obviously in terms of his background. And it's tough living in the city. You know, you have to struggle at every level.
Said I'm a living man, I've got work to do.
Bob had entered Kingston as a child in the late 50s. He arrived with his mother alongside thousands of other migrants from the Jamaican countryside.
I'm a rebel,
He grew up streetwise in the shanty district of Trenchtown, determined to make a career in music.
Trenchtown was just a struggle living, where you would get up and you hear people fight every day. As Bob said, you get up and you quarrel every day, you're saying price to the devil, I say. It was appealing, because we're coming out of this situation where, as they say, you have to box food out of hog mouth to survive. We have days when we have to go in the dump looking for food.
We couldn't afford to buy records, so we listened to the radio. And anything the radio play is that we hear. So I wasn't really into them things. I was really into, like, I call it spiritual music, you know, till it get more revolutionized.
There was something about Bob that you could see. His stubbornness, his fight, you could see he was at war. In other words, you know, he was at, a few times you would find him at ease, but he was always at that guitar thing. It's his guitar, it's his music, it's what he has to say.
Don't you pick and refuse, man, 'cause the things people refuse are the things they should choose. Do you hear me? Hear what I say?
In the early 60s, music offered the quickest route out of the ghetto. Young singers had to bluff their way through first auditions, composing and performing tunes about the scandals and political trickery of the community around them.
Sing the tune.
You had to be strong, you know, because the survival game wasn't one that was a easy road. Yeah, it's a rocky road, tough road. But if you keep lifting weight, then automatically you'll get strong. You come from a community that is people always crying and mourning and weeping and wailing.
Small harmony groups like the Wailers borrowed their first instruments and sold their songs to unscrupulous producers who paid them a few pounds and kept all the royalties.
The time them say are the right time. The time them say it a go drink.
The original Teenage Wailers group included both Bunny Wailer and Peter Tosh.
There was a time when we were what you would call imperfect in the music. And meanwhile learning that, we find out that we had a voice that could, me and Bunny together, had the kind of voice that could decorate Bob's music and makes it beautiful. So we just did that wholeheartedly.
He was handsome, he's still handsome, wherever he is. But that, when I looked at him, I says, wow, what a nice looking guy. I didn't think I would like a guy with his complexion, because I was always after tall, dark, and handsome. I can recall Bob asking me to use shoe polish in his hair to make it more African, more black. So when I find myself seeing him, I think sympathy came first. Sympathy came first, and then him being the type of person that he is, you wouldn't have a choice but to really give your heart out to him.
Bob was always first in the studio and last to leave, cajoling the others to rehearse through the night. They practiced at Studio One, owned by the legendary Coxsone Dodd.
Well, at that time, with a lot of rehearsal, everybody was hyped up and really sure of themselves. So we had a meeting, and I selected Bob to be the leader. Because whenever the sound is not right, you could see that facial expression. When he's not happy and shows it, everybody try to fall in line.
Bob was very strict in terms of if you have a rehearsal, you have to be on time. And you don't laugh in rehearsals. Don't play around rehearsals. This is a serious thing, and if you want a future, you have to work for it.
But the kind of music the Wailers were working at couldn't get any airplay. The radio stations were firmly stuck in the colonial era, playing British and American imports. So giant sound systems toured the island, taking the music direct to the people.
comes Bob Marley and the Wailing Wailers, simmer down. Sister down. Get out, boy.
Simmer Down was recorded in the morning, pressed in the afternoon, and was playing on Coxson's sound system that same night. The Wailers' first record was an instant #1 hit.
Everything started there. Everything started there. It's like, you know, you can't describe that moment, man. You in your house, you just sang the song in the morning time, then in the night, without even realizing or thinking about, you know, going to, you know, that it will be on the air. You hear it blasted on the air. You can just imagine that kind of thrill. It was very thrilling.
Shake like a little tree! Woo!
Rude boy or rude girls would be a title given to the lesser privileged youths. You know, rude boy, it's a rude boy. You know, it's a rude girl because you come from Trenchtown, because you come from Jonestown, because you come from Hannahtown, because you come from Denhamtown. You're a rude girl. They made it seem as if the only way you can exist is to snatch, because there was nothing for the ghetto people to have survived legitimately.
Because violence at the dance halls was getting out of hand, their first record had told the rude boys to simmer down. But the Wailers then affirmed their rebel status by becoming musical rude boys themselves.
He's gonna put it on, yeah, that's for sure. I'm gonna put it on. I'm gonna put it on. I'm gonna put it on.
Put It On both has sexual overtones, has rude boy hints, and at the same time he's thanking the Lord for giving him the spirit. So you have the religious, the romantic, the sexual, and the revolutionary all in one, and yet nothing is overstated. This is perhaps one of the keys to Marley's magic.
One love, one heart, let's join together and be all right. One love, oh Lord.
Several of Bob's love songs around that time were written for his girlfriend, Rita, whom he was courting while recording a string of minor hits for Coxsone Dodd. Bob was still very much under the influence of that powerful producer.
Bob, when he met Rita here, and Rita got pregnant, I took the financial expense to get them married because I figured this was the right way, and I'm trying to be like a father figure.
You better marry her. I thought that's what he told me, Coxsone told him. And he didn't ask anybody else. He didn't even tell Peter and Bonnie that he was getting married. And he took his advance and he went and he got me a ring. And I think Coxsone knew about it before I did.
Steer it up, little darling, steer it up. Come on, baby, steer it up, little darling, steer it up. Oh, it's been a long steer it together since I've got you on my mind.
You could see the ambition in them. They were ambitious enough to say, hey, we're going to make it, we're going to be like the Impressions. Because that's all they listen to most of the time. You go to the studio and you would find them listening to Curtis Mayfield, James Brown, you know, and listening. Then Coxsone would bring us a pile of records from America. And to us that was, woo, we're listening to American music, you know.
In February 1966, Bob Marley made the first of many trips to Delaware, where his mother had moved a few years before. He went there to raise money to start his own record label. He worked for about 8 months, sweeping floors in the DuPont Hotel. On later trips, he did things like working on the night shift of a Chrysler factory. During that time, he was exposed to the civil uprisings in America. He saw things firsthand where he lived. He saw the television reports every night of the brutality going on around the United States, and that had a profound influence on the kind of writing he did.
This morning, I woke up in a curfew. Oh God, I was a prisoner too. Yeah, could not recognize the faces standing over me. They were all dressed in uniforms of brutality. How many rivers do we have to cross before we can talk to the boss? Yeah.
Reggae music is the people music. You know, reggae music is news. It's news about your own self, your own history. Things that you wouldn't really, they wouldn't teach in a school.
That's why we gonna be burning and revolution tonight. Oh yeah.
Yes, it's very clear if you listen to early Wailers music that the black music in the black American community was extremely influential. We had a struggle that, you know, included our writers, our performers, and the people. It was a whole movement, and I have no doubt that Bob and perhaps the whole of Jamaica listened, heard, and was inspired by what they saw happening here musically and otherwise.
Burning all pollution tonight. Burning all illusion.
After being exposed to so much aggression and prejudice against blacks in the United States, Bob went back to Jamaica and turned to Rastafari. It was 1966, and he was 21 years old. Rastafari is distinctively Jamaican, a black consciousness movement that replaces armed physical struggle with a spiritual one.
But I call it
It appealed to Bob because Rastas despise the political forces they believe impose poverty and brutality upon the people. Those Rasta ideas were to revolutionize Bob's music and politics in the years that followed.
Said I hear the words of a higher man say. Then I hear the words of the Rasta man say. Babylon throne gone down, gone down. Babylon throne gone down.
I find myself among a people who I Selassie I call the wonderful people, the Africans who have been birthed here in the Western Hemisphere.
Rastas have been outcasts in Jamaica since colonial times, viewed as a threat by mainstream society. Their alternative philosophy is based on a rereading of the Bible, which sees black people in the West as exiles from their African homeland, and Emperor Haile Selassie of Ethiopia as the true Messiah. Bob passionately embraced these ideas.
Well, I've been a Rasta from ever since, you know, but it's not how long I've been a Rasta, it's how long it takes to grow up. Because what he is what he is from beginning to the end. It can never change. So we're just Rasta from creation, you know.
2,000 years of history. Could not be wiped away so easily.
I will say to the people, man, be still and know that His Imperial Majesty Emperor Haile Selassie I of Ethiopia is the rightful ruler. Now the Bible says so, Babylon newspaper says so, and I, the children, say so. What they want? They want a white God. Well, God come black.
They said the Zion train is coming our way. Got to take it to thank the Lord.
I'm a Rasta, and I know I want to live near my father, and my father lives in Ethiopia. So I must live where my father is.
One of the early slogans of Rasta was, "The mother forsake your father, forsake your Rasta will take you." And Bob would have heard this. And on all the campsites, he, Selassie, definitely became the father figure for Bob in a personal sense. Bob felt a special affinity for Selassie based on his rejection by his father.
Captain Norval Marley, Bob's father, was a white Jamaican who had supervised the colonial farmlands for the British Crown. He got a local teenager pregnant, married her, and left. And that was all Bob ever knew of him.
You know, Bob's father being a white person, his mother being a black person, in those days it was a kind of reproach situation. Reproaches came down both sides of the fence. You should never have gotten a black woman pregnant. You should never be pregnant by a white man. So that child is kind of a child that is, you know, not saying not wanted, but scared off.
What I couldn't understand in those days, I understand it after. And then I just realized, you know, that is a part of life. And that was like the resentment, you know, between black and white.
Sitting in the heat of the day.
Born fatherless, never know my father. My mother worked 30 shillings a week to keep me go to school, right? We don't have education, we have inspiration. If I was educated, I would be a damn fool.
I think what really contributed to Bob being who he was the fact that he grew up in the country, that he used to farm, and he had that sort of innate intelligence that, you know, you have to put in to take out. But if you grow up in an urban environment, the only thing between you and what you want is money. Anything you want is available immediately.
To succeed in the cutthroat music business of the late 60s, Bob Marley knew he would have to return to the Kingston studios and reflect the hard realities of street life in his songs.
No sun will shine in my day-to-day. No sun will shine. The high yellow moon won't come out to play.
Reggae music is a music created by Rasta people, and it carry earth force, people rhythm, like people, you know, it's a rhythm where people working, people moving, you know. Well, we play music, you know, and we don't play for suit critics. We play what we want to play, when we want to play it, how we want to play it. And we have a reason why we play it too.
You concrete jungle, man, you got
The local recording industry was highly competitive, full of ambitious and talented vocal groups, of which the Wailers were just one. But they had enjoyed the advantage of being backed by some of the most revered instrumentalists in the history of Jamaican music, like the Scatterlights, whose particular brand of ska music had been influenced by American jazz. However, for all Jamaican artists at that time, making music was one thing, getting properly paid for it quite another.
The producers weren't paying the artists the justice that was due them, and a lot of people couldn't take that. They got frustrated and backed out of it. A lot of them. The Wailers didn't. The Wailers decided that known frustration ain't gonna stop the Wailers. So we took frustration as an inspiration to write songs to get us out of the frustrations.
The Kingston music business was not sympathetic to rebellious young musicians in the late 60s, especially not those like Bob Marley and the Wailers, who were both Rastafarians and rude boys.
This is my heart to rock you steady.
Recording studios, pressing plants, and even radio stations were in the hands of people who didn't want to give Rastas and Rudies any kind of platform. But the Wailers were desperate for airplay and took matters into their own hands.
It was a kind of a struggle, and if a guy shut the door in your face, you gotta find a way to open that door. You know, so sometimes people get roughed up, you know, because you're trying to stop something that is progressive and you don't have a reason to. Why are you trying to hold down the Wailers' music? You can't say why. Why do you play other people's music but you don't want to play the Wailers' music? You don't say why. Well, we're going to tell you to play it, or you ain't going to work to play nothing. So if you're going to work, remember, you're going to play the Wailers, or when we're going to meet you coming out of work. And we're going to make sure you don't go back to work unless you play the Wailers. Whether we meant it or not, that's how we got some radio play.
He's I&I, superstar, Mr. Music, Bob Marley.
Yes, my friend, we're in the streets again. Yes, my friend, and set me free again.
Despite their tough guy tactics, or because of them, the Wailers weren't getting the exposure they wanted. Bob was now 25. He badly needed a new sound and a new direction for his music. He found both with Lee Scratch Perry, a maverick producer who was to change the style of Marley's music with collaborations like Doppy Conqueror.
Lee Perry was a nutty professor. He got a different side of Bob that was happy and humorous. He had that charisma that makes the rhythm sticky and catchy and nice. And so Bob used that as something, as a compliment to him, that this man was able to bring out some of what he had in him, that maybe normally he would be a little scared to bring out himself.
So if you are bullbucker, let me tell you this. I'm a dopey,
Scratch has always been as much performer as producer.
Boof, 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 toof, boof, 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 toof, 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 toof. It's coming from here. Then the bass is coming from the brain. Where you go, toof, toof, toof,
The musicians Bob played with at these sessions became the Wailers Band.
Well, when we begin to work as Wailers together, yeah, we carry a strong vibes, because what Bob was saying and what Scratch was saying and what the hippie boys upset the band was saying, you know, was the perfect combination to start that soul rebel kind of feeling.
So
I was loving the words that Bob Marley created himself. He have some good words and have a good vibes and had a good thoughts of bringing melody together. He makes the best melody. He makes the best melody, honestly.
But these groundbreaking soul rebel sessions were to end on a sour note when Scratch, believing the session tapes were his, sold the songs in England without the Wailers' consent.
He sold out. And then it led to where we would have to maybe charge for murdering Scratch. So we avoided that and just walked away and leave all of that recording and all of that stuff to be in the hands of pirates all over the world. Today, you go into the shops and you see those same songs with different Bob Marley pictures on them, but it's the same songs because Scratch did that.
However, these Lee Perry recordings were heard in England by the founder of Island Records. He grabbed the opportunity to sign the Frustrated Wailers band and offered Bob Marley's music to the world beyond Jamaica.
I first became aware of him in 1962, and during the course of the next 10 years, at times we released some of his records on Ireland. But I never met him until 1973.
I say, preacher man, don't tell me heaven is under the earth, yeah. You know, I don't know what life is really worth. It's not all that glitter is gold, and after story I'd never been told. Now you see the light, stand up for your right, hey, get up, stand up.
The strategy really was to present them as like a black rock group. That's why, though when I initially signed them, it was Bob Marley and the Wailers, I said, well, let's make it the Wailers.
You see, we're sick and we're tired of the bullshit game, and gonna go to heaven in a Jesus' name. We know and we understand that mighty God is living. The fools and people sometimes, you can't fool all the people all of the time. So now we see the light. What you gonna do? You better stand up for your right. So you better get up, stand up, stand up, stand up for your right. Get up, stand up, get up, stand up. Don't give up, don't give it, don't give it, don't give it. Get up, stand up, get up, get down, stand up for your right. Get up, get up, get up, stand up. Don't give up, 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 don't give up the fight. Life's gonna be your right.
Following the modest success of their first island albums, a young protege of Chris Blackwell's was sent to Jamaica to look after the Wailers.
I felt that politically what was going on in Jamaica should be definitely put in songs, just like Dylan did. You know, he would document stuff about people, and I just thought that we have a voice now, and here's this band, they have the voice. And this boy, everybody likes him. You can definitely get them through the door with him. Once he was through the door, he'd pull everybody else with him.
Esther had been sent to help manage the band, but it didn't take her long to fall for Bob's charms.
When I met Bob, I was 29. I loved him very much. I really loved him. I believed in him. I believed in all of them, They were people who did not have anything to do with the system, yet they knew exactly what was going on in the world outside. They listened to the radio, the BBC, all the time, to the news. They read the newspapers, and they read the Bible. And from that, they broke down everything to their philosophy and what place we were in time.
Basically, everything is political. If you think of it political. I'll never be a politician, nor think political. Just deal with life and nature. That's the greatest thing to me.
Well, he didn't believe too much in too much smiling, because his thing was, you know, when you come down on the rock and see how hard life is down there, you'll see why I don't smile. When I asked him why he screw up his face so much. But then when he did smile, he had such a wonderful smile. By then I found out he had kids, I didn't know I was in this relationship, that he was married and kids all over the place and whatever. I was quite absolutely flabbergasted. I said, how can you, a young boy like you, have so many children? I didn't know that he had many, many more.
Woman is the mother of creation. You know?
Do you have a queen?
We have one queen, no more than one queen. Yeah.
Is he entitled to more than one queen?
Yes, he's entitled to all the queens.
Oh, how many?
I don't know how many that is, but yes.
All at the same time?
At the same time? Yeah, time to stand, yeah.
He was a country boy, very, very simple, very unsophisticated. He might have acquired a bit of sophistication later on as he became famous, but when I met him, he was totally, you know, we thought was totally innocent. That's why I thought it was unbelievable that he had children. I thought of him as a little boy. But I wouldn't say that he was a sophisticated, educated person. It's just that we Jamaicans are full of sayings and metaphors. For example, when he said to me, when we were writing I Shot the Sheriff, and he said, no, just, I want something for the Jamaicans. No, let's get out, come up with something for the Jamaicans. I could just immediately say, well, if you shot the guy and he's been bothering you all this time, well, the thing is, every day bucket a go, well, one day the butter must drop out. Well, it's just a Jamaican thing. We say that all the time. It means, you know, every day you're messing with me, one day you're going to get it.
Every day the bucket goes to the well. I mean, one day the butter will drop out. And I say, one day the butter will drop out. And so, bye, I shot the sheriff. Lord, I didn't shoot the deputy. It was I who shot the sheriff, but I didn't shoot no deputy.
With the departure of Peter Tosh and Bunny Wailer in 1973, Rita Marley had formed the I3 backing group. They supported Bob on stage as he aimed his message, cloaked in proverbs, at politicians who ruled through physical violence.
Then all of a sudden I saw Sheriff John Brown.
He could not be just a singer. I mean, even looking at him when he's singing, he's fighting a war, but it's one that it was not obvious, because he speaks about spiritual wickedness in high and low places where you don't see everything that's wrong, but it's there. And so Bob felt he had to fight this. So, yes, he could be a most dangerous man, he could be on the most wanted list.
By the mid-70s, the streets of Kingston reflected all the anger and discontent of the Jamaican people. Their politicians had failed to deliver the promised fruits of independence, and Bob Marley expressed his people's frustration at street level.
Never make a politician.
I believe that politics wasn't number one for him, but it was number one for him to make an explanation to people who didn't understand what was going on politically. To all the people, all the ghetto people from Trenchtown and Rum Lane and Matches Lane. These people who believed in him, he could explain it to them better than any politician could. What was going on politically, economically, and culturally.
The belly full, but we're hungry. A hungry mob is a hungry mob. A rain or fall, but the tub. A pot of cook, but the food and night. We're gonna talk to the music. We're talking. Hey, we're talking to the music. We're talking.
There's a lot of folks in Jamaica who can't read. So therefore, there's got to be some message sent to people that can understand what's going on in the government and what's happening on the land, and he was the one chosen to do that.
When I stand up and I see the youth fighting against the youth for the politicians, then I really feel sick, and it's just because they keep the youth hungry and they can't get no job, and the people who control the jobs are politicians. So you find, you know, politics is just trick.
Jamaican politics had become polarized between two warring parties, and each had gunmen to protect their own territories. The government was led by the late Michael Manley, whose march towards socialism alarmed his American neighbors. They feared he was leading Jamaica towards Castro and communism. But Manley and his aides recognized how useful reggae music could be in winning the Jamaican people to their cause.
I think the politicians used reggae. Reggae, especially through people like Bob Marley, expressed the wishes and the sentiments of the people. Their protests came through music and through the song. And they said what they disagreed with and what they agreed with. And so you could find out really how the people were thinking by what songs they sang. It was one way by which you could gauge the people.
You can't get a bar of soap to buy for bathing, or you can't get detergent to buy for washing.
In opposition was the Jamaica Labour Party, led by the right-wing, pro-American Edward Seaga.
In many places you can't get flowers to buy.
There's no question about the fact that music is intertwined with politics. Every public meeting begins and ends with music, and music is interspersed right throughout. And the songs reflect what happenings are taking place in political life. You wouldn't be able to separate politics and music in terms of the extent to which they're interwoven as a form of message.
Both parties were using reggae to sell their policies, and both were anxious to conscript Bob Marley. He had the street credibility they lacked. But Bob wanted nothing to do with party politics in his songs.
Yes, it is necessary to understand the lyrics. You see, the music say death to black and white oppressors, to all oppressors. You know, we deal with human beings, we deal with the purpose why God created man in the first place.
Build your penitentiary. We build your schools. The brainwash education is trying to make us your fools.
In the mid-70s, Kingston was divided into political territories controlled by warlords. Many believed the CIA was supporting the right-wing Edward Seaga with money, guns and propaganda to bring down the so-called communist government.
They associate with communists, they work like communists, they think like communists, and they do the things that communists do. And as far as we are concerned, we know that they are a communist government hiding behind the fact of some other pretty name.
We knew that the violence that came up during those years, and I was in a position very close to see it, was something which was not entirely local. We traced it down to the CIA in many ways. I remember, I think it was around 75. Kissinger himself personally complained that we were carrying on an anti-American campaign, an anti-CIA campaign from our platform. And he named Michael Manley and named me as having said things about America's interference and against the CIA. And he said, "Dudley, you take it from me, I know of no CIA at all operating in Jamaica."
I believe the CIA was using the Jamaican Labour Party as its instrument in the entire campaign against the Michael Manley government. I'd say most of the violence was coming from the Jamaica Labour Party side, and behind them was the CIA in terms of getting the weapons in and getting the money in with all the propaganda guidance, because there was a steady stream, a continuous campaign of propaganda against the Manley government. The weapons, there was no problem with getting weapons in, because the ganja smuggling was a perfect route for bringing weapons back into Jamaica from the United States.
While local politicians benefited from outside assistance, Bob Marley condemned them in his songs.
The CIA would look upon the radical political content of reggae music as dangerous because it would help to create a consciousness among poor people, among the great majority of Jamaicans. And of course, naturally, the climate was created for an attempt on Bob Marley's life.
Bob was inviting further trouble when he agreed with the government's request to front a free concert called Smile Jamaica. While Marley dreamed of uniting his people with music, the politicians planned to use Bob as their pawn and manipulate the Wailers to support new elections.
The Wailers were a force to deal with. The Wailers were the voice of the people. The Wailers were the eyes and the ears of the people. So these politicians wanted to get mileage. So in order to get the youths and the people's attention, they used the Wailers. That's all it was. Bob is a musician who wants to play for the people. But these guys try to see if they can get their thing going, and they're not worried about how dangerous that is going to be for Bob.
2 days before the Smile Jamaica concert, which had become transparently political, gunmen attacked Bob's home in Hope Road.
Entertainer and reggae star Bob Marley, Rita Marley, and the manager of the Wailers, Don Taylor, are now patients in the University Hospital after receiving gunshot wounds during a shooting incident which took place at Marley's home at 56 Hope Road tonight.
That night was cold-blooded. When I was in the car, I heard things like firecrackers. I said, what? But then, when I looked, I saw some men walking, creeping, like getting up to enter into the step, into the room where Bob was. And I heard, bah, 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 bah. And I said, shit, that's gone, man.
I hear bang! And I could see those blue flames and spark. And then I could hear gunshot licking from the back, coming from the side, going right back to the front. That is when I'm shooting and making their way out.
And I walked and I said, let's go find Bob. And we went and we saw Bob coming around. He got shot in his elbow. Then you hear police siren and everything was happening now. And they said, let's rush to the hospital because you're shot.
Well, we know it was some political gangsters. We couldn't tell you if it was left or right wing or what, but we know that what we were doing, that we could expect an invasion from all directions.
It happened to satisfy some people, and it happened to strengthen me. My life not important to me, other people's life important. My life is only important if me can help plenty people. If my life is just me, my own security, then I don't want it. My life is for people. That's the way me is.
Despite warnings that he could be shot again, Marley was determined to perform at the Smile Jamaica show.
Prime Minister Manley has expressed his deep regret at the act of terrorism directed against Bob Marley and his associates, and has said those responsible for the act would never be forgiven by decent people of Jamaica.
Although Marley was not expected to appear, the crowd began building early, and by 5 p.m. was 50,000 strong. We have just received word that Bob is on his way.
Superintendent of police will be out of communication for a bit, but get the cameras ready to shoot at arrival.
Political violence fill your city.
Prime Minister Michael Manley brazenly attended the concert to show his support for Bob Marley, and he went on to win the elections of 1976.
Rasta don't work for no CIA. Rat race, rat race, rat race, yeah. Rat race. I'm saying, when you think it's peace and safety, a sudden destruction, collective security.
Following the Smile Jamaica concert, Bob went into self-imposed exile. To escape further attempts on his life and to revise his own position in this struggle, he went to England. While preparing his new Exodus album, Bob lived in London, not with his wife, but with a Jamaican beauty queen.
I think he was very hurt that whomever was responsible was actually able to convince his fellow Jamaican to pick up a gun, a life-threatening weapon, and come into his camp at Hope Road to threaten his life. He understood that it was also to teach him. Just teach him a little more about human nature, teach him the power of evil, because you never know the day when evil is just going to jump up and have a little bit more strength.
Nation plots against nation, yeah. Brothers fight against brothers, oh yeah. And all of this and all of that, you put them together, you don't know what. There is too much trouble, oh no.
I think he was sort of exiled in a sense, self-exiled. He moved out of Jamaica basically for pretty much a couple of years, from 76 until 78. So at that time, he became more global.
I wanna love you and treat you right. I wanna love you every day and every night. We'll be together with the roof right over our heads. We'll share the same room, yeah. Put your provide the bread. Is this love?
I had never met anyone like Bob when I met him. He wasn't the smooth talker in terms of what your normal suitor would have been. You know, his idea of a gift might have been a mango, or just, you know, very, very coy ways of inviting you to come outside and have a walk in the evening, or, you know, he wasn't the one to call up and say, well, how about dinner and dancing tomorrow night at 8 o'clock, because he didn't live his life like that anyway. First of all, if there was music happening, then music came before everything else. It really didn't matter how beautiful you were or how keenly he seemed interested the day before. You could easily fall to zero priority if there happened to be a new song going down. That always, always took priority.
I want to give you some love. Good, good loving. I want to give you some good, good loving.
During this time, Bob's wife Rita remained one of the I3, always traveling and recording with him.
In London, I can remember we had this Exodus album, and he was doing this song that I found that he wrote about Cindy. So when he just met Cindy, and so I'm saying, what? You write that song for Cindy and want me to sing it? I'm not singing. And so I was stubborn, and I don't know why I did, but I was just saying, like, I'm going to show you something so that I can be myself. And so Master said, no, come with her. Oh God, Bob, I'm going to be mad if you don't. And I says, I am not going.
Turn your lights down low.
Yes, Turn Your Lights Down Low is my song. It has been said that all of those love songs on that particular album were written at the time when we were at the height of our relationship. And I know he was heavily criticized for it. And I remember him saying to me, boy, you see what happened now, them say me I get soft now because it's pure love song and thing, and me's a soldier, you know, so me have to get militant now.
And until there's no longer first class nor second class citizens of any nation, until the color of a man's skin is of no more significance to the color of his eyes, I've got to say wow.
It was in '76 that Bob really became a superstar in Europe and a household name in England. Suddenly you go from small island girl to being splashed all over the front page of every newspaper that you pick up in London. And not just that, but tied in with someone like Bob, who was a very controversial character. And they tended to highlight, of course, anything they thought was negative about his character and his personality, his habits, his wife, his liaisons with other women, whatever. So they painted a pretty sordid picture, is what I guess I would have to call it.
I didn't feel like I was a wife. I felt like I was Bob's background vocal. So there are little things that I would have to remind him, hey Bob, be careful, watch those girls, watch those this. Then I became the watch eye, the mother hen type, and he would call me sometimes to get girls out of his room. I didn't complain because I felt I was there for the job, and so the relationship became more like I have a commitment with this thing.
What can bring this identity? People don't let them use her now.
I think he liked to communicate best through his music, and I think that that's where lyrically, you know, you feel his strength. He said everything he wanted and needed to say that way, and I think when he was done with that, he was drained. And what were you going to say after that anyway? What were you going to do? Try and find another way to say it all over again? What would be the point? If you're not listening to my music, then you'll never get it.
I say, no woman, no cry. No, no woman, woman, no cry. I say, I remember when we used to sit in the government yard in Trenchtown, observing the hypocrites as they would mingle with the good people we meet. Good friends we have, oh good friends we've lost along the way. Hey, say, in this great future which is life, you can't forget your past. So dry your tears, I say, and then no woman not cry.
He loved Jamaica very much. And I think that he saw Jamaica as just a small part of black people and oppressed people's struggles all over the world. So he understood that struggle, so it was no problem for him to talk about it. He had that authenticity.
Bob returned to Jamaica in 1978 after 14 months of exile in London. He was determined to have another go at holding a free concert, one that could bring peace and reconciliation to his divided island.
Think you're in heaven, but you're living in hell. Think you're in heaven, but you're living in hell.
Little had changed politically in Jamaica since the assassination attempt on Bob. The island remained demoralized and destabilized by outside forces.
The purpose of all those activities of violence and armed robbery and murder, coupled with the propaganda campaigns calling for the overthrow of the Manley government, naturally created a situation of terror, really, of tension, of uncertainty, of doubt, and fear. this was the purpose.
We try to make really bring peace, knowing that we really can't solve a problem with a war, you know. It doesn't really solve a problem. We don't feel like really killing someone. Whose problem am I going to solve when I kill someone? You know what I mean? So I figure the peace is the best thing. And that's why I go ahead and work with it, because it was a spiritual thing that happened.
To make everything come true, we got to be together. Yeah.
What Bob made happen was the One Love Peace concert, intended to bring together the warring politicians in front of their people. For Bob, it was a way to reassert his place in Jamaican life after a year abroad. As for the politicians, both parties still wanted Marley's endorsement.
Show the people that love and right. Show the people that we're gonna unite. Show the people that we're love and right. Show the people that everything is all right. What you doing? 'Cause I wanna send the matches right out there. I mean, I'm not so good at talking, but I hope you understand what I'm trying to say. Well, I'm trying to say, could we have up here, on stage here, the presence of Mr. Michael Marre and Mr. Edward Seaga. Oh! I just want to shake hands and show the people that we gonna meet them right. We gonna unite. We gonna meet them right. We got to unite. Get.
When the right-wing leader of the Jamaica Labour Party, Edward Seaga, was hauled on stage, everyone wondered whether Socialist Prime Minister Michael Manley would have the nerve to meet and greet him.
The moon is right over my head, and I give my love instead. Lord, the moon was right over above my head, and I give my love instead.
Manley arrived to cement what seemed a unique moment in Jamaican history. But the grand One Love gesture was destined to change little for the people of Jamaica. For the politicians, it was a photo opportunity.
Love, prosperity, be with us all. Jah, Rastafari, Selassie.
Bob was not by temperament or mind the kind of person who would ever become, say, a part of a party. Political, yes, in that he was one of the most articulate troubadours of the ghetto, its suffering, its pressures, that I have ever heard. And the interesting thing about him is that as he grew in stature, as he became a millionaire, for example, one often wondered, will he tend to go soft, to become gimmicky, to try to appeal to a more commercial market?
Jamaica's first international superstar now wanted, above all, to show his fellow countrymen he hadn't sold out. So his music continued to reflect his devotion to Rastafari.
There's a natural mystic flowing through the air.
It was as a Rasta that Bob demonstrated how rooted he was in Jamaican culture. One of the basic tenets of Rastafari is the healing power of marijuana, to which Bob was notoriously devoted.
Herb. Herb is a plant. I mean, herbs are good for everything. Why these people who want to do so much good for everyone, who call themselves governments and this and that, why them say you must not use the herb? You see? We just see them just say, no, you mustn't use it because it make you rebel. Against what? Against men who won't crave, because them crave for the things like say, them have some material things and them want to captivate your mind and tell you, say, well, you have to work and put you on pension and him keep it all. So Herb make you look for yourself, and instead of you want to work for the man, you want to be one of the man too. Not in the sense of how him is, but in the sense of why should you have to bow to these things. That means you own man. That's the first time you own yourself. You do what you want to do. Anything people want to say about you, you don't care.
It takes a revolution to make a solution.
Bob was able to show he was his own man by using his immense wealth to build his own studios at home in 56 Hope Road. This meant he could also turn his back on the local recording industry that had exploited him as a youth.
So much confusion.
Bob started Tough Gong so he could gain the reins of control over his own work, so that he could produce his own material at his own pace. If he got an inspiration in the middle of the night, he could go down to the studio and record it right on the spot, and so that he could reap the rewards of his work instead of a producer who paid him pennies.
When Bob arrived in Jamaica, within minutes, literally minutes, 56 Hope Road would be filled with people. I mean, you could hardly find a way to walk through the yard. And the crowds spilled over onto the street, down the road. Bob spent hours, especially at night, interviewing people in need. At that time, there was a lot of political violence, and a lot of women lost their fathers because of this. He became, as it were, the father of their children. He gave a lot of handouts to them. Then there are people who would be dependent on him for hot meals. Every day we had to have funds around to make sure that certain people got something to eat. Chris Blackwell once said in an interview that Bob probably took care of maybe 4,000 people. I think that's even a modest estimation. It might even have been much more than that. There's another side of him which was extremely disciplined, not only with respect to his art and craft as an artist, writer, musician, but he didn't tolerate indiscipline around him. You know, he was very, very bright, although he didn't like people to think that he was. In fact, he tried to portray a different picture, but he was extremely shrewd.
We just really try to set up certain like a machine where financially we can really help one another. Because, you know, from time to time, financial problem and people have, you know, and it causes a lot of mistrust, misbelief, propaganda, fighting, killing, through, you know, direction.
We'll be forever loving Jah.
There were different Bob Marleys. There was Bob Marley the lover, Bob Marley the family man, Bob Marley the footballer.
He was passionate about football, and anywhere he went, they would get a side together. And if there was a side there locally who wanted a match, they were right in it. So he injured the toenail, and he wouldn't give it a chance to heal. And that was when they detected the melanoma, the skin cancer. And they removed the entire nail and the nail bed and everything, and did a graft from his leg here over it, so there was no toenail at all there. And it healed beautifully. And if you were to say to him, did you go and have your checkups and your tests, and he would say, what you want? You want me to have cancer? He used to get very angry.
Denying the cancer didn't help it go away. It would gradually sap Bob's strength as it moved upwards from his toe. Though he was only 34, Bob's days were numbered.
Generally, his demeanor was thoughtful and serious, and I think he felt that too much joking around, people weren't going to take him seriously, and that was the last thing he wanted, and especially because he was in this tremendous leadership role. He wanted people to know that, look, this is the way we do things.
All right, there's some Rastaman who would denounce using the fruits of Babylon, so to speak, to build up any kind of
The
organization?
fruits of Babylon. Babylon don't have no fruits.
To get his music out of what he called Babylon and into Africa was perhaps the greatest professional desire of Bob's career, going back to his earliest days.
How can you be sitting there telling me that you care?
Bob always believed that the power of his lyrics could change political systems and carry the message of Rastafari back to its homeland.
The people suffer in the suffering in every way. In every way.
Above all, Bob despised the apartheid system which then existed in South Africa. The authorities there were terrified that his lyrics would incite the people to rise up against them, so they censored the tracks they called inflammatory.
Some people got everything.
They used the thick pen on the cover so that we'd never see the title itself. And then on the LP itself, then they scoop the title so that it's just not there. And the track they use as a sharp instrument, either a knife or a razor, and just cut it across, so that when you play it, the needle will go from track to track and you'll never understand what it's all about on the track.
How good and how pleasant it would be before God and man, yeah, to see the unification of all Africans, yeah.
Africa to Bob means everything in terms of proving to himself how much of Africa is him, you know, and showing that, hey, as much as you all think I'm half white or half black, I'm an African. My heritage is in Africa.
Who liveth and reigneth with I and I continually, ever faithful, ever sure.
Such was his reputation in Africa as a musical freedom fighter that when Zimbabwe won its independence in 1980, Bob was the only foreign artist invited to play at the celebrations, watched by Prince Charles and Robert Mugabe.
His call was for African unity. That was his greatest wish, and that was what everything he did was focused on, as a Rasta man, as a black man, as an African. Music is a cultural weapon, and Bob used it in the wisest way. He was a freedom fighter. I think in one interview one time he said he was going to fight the war single-handed with music.
No more internal power struggle. Come together, overcome a little trouble. Yes, 'cause soon we'll find out who is the real revolutionaries. And I don't want my people to be contrary. And brothers, you're right, you're right, you're right, you're right, you're so right. We love the fight, we gon' fight, we gonna fight, we gon' fight, we love the fight, we gon' fight, fighting for right. Zimbabwe, oh, Zimbabwe.
During these years of non-stop activity, of travel and recording, Bob had continued to ignore the cause of his increasing ill health.
I know there are stories, and I know there is the possibility that they were planning to kill Bob, and the CIA and other forces who might have wanted Bob to be silenced. But it was at the time of this that Bob discovered that he had melanoma. It's a skin cancer. It is a fatal cancer. It's one of the most fatal cancers. But the interesting thing about melanoma is it usually is not contracted by black people. It is a skin cancer that Europeans contract. It can be hereditary. And so, therefore, it's possible that the real story is that it is Bob's father and his genes that passed on the potential for Bob to develop this cancer.
When the whole world let you down and there's nowhere for you to turn, 'cause all of your best friends let you down.
I think he just worked harder and harder and harder. I mean, he was on tour more and more nearing the end of his life, in the studio more, just in demand so much more, I think his life just became so much more stressful, because I don't know how one person would have taken any more pressure, and he really had reached a point where there was just no peace.
Too much of anything is not good, really. And so you find out with success and stardom, popularity, everybody was coming in. The pressure started, the pressure arises, and it made a difference. He became very edgy, and his relaxation time was very minimal. His family time was very minimal, and then, you know, he was losing something.
Suddenly, all the world's media wanted to interview the star they called the wild man of reggae. Bob found it hard to hide his contempt for tabloid journalism.
Isn't it in fact true that many Jamaican people get involved in the trafficking of marijuana and therefore get the bad reputation associated with Rastafarians?
People get trafficking. You see, I don't really know anything about those parts of life, you know. All I know about is Rastafari, you know, and try bringing this truth to the people.
What would I have to do to be a Rastafari?
Well, first you have to be born again. We show the people of Jamaica Rastafari.
No. Do they like you?
Do you think any of the Rastas have been involved in the killings in Jamaica over the years, or that's somebody else?
To most people who are very conservative in dress, you look quite strange.
Even if the ganja-smoking Marley, ripped out of his head most of the day, seems hard to take seriously, even though the temptation is to laugh at a stoned Jamaican musician who worships a dead Ethiopian dictator, Bob Marley's view of the plight of the black man is hard to knock.
You know, just everybody wanted a piece of him, and they took a piece of him, you know. And it was like hardly any left for him when he really needed it for himself. I remember speaking to him in the morning sometimes, and he wouldn't reply. Hey, Bob, good morning, how you doing? What's up? He just had a lot on his mind.
In the fall of 1980, Bob undertook a tour primarily to reach the black American audience. There were people involved in the promotion of that tour who were trying to get him not, in fact, to go into the hospital for treatment, but to continue on the road with the tour. Why? Well, perhaps an overwhelming reason was the amount of money that would not be made if Bob didn't go out on the road. So it was ultimately a mercenary reason behind that. On Sunday, September 21st, 1980, after doing 2 nights at Madison Square Garden, Bob was jogging in Central Park, and he collapsed and began frothing at the mouth. And they carried him back to the hotel, took him to a doctor, and the doctor found that the melanoma, which had been diagnosed 3 years earlier, had metastasized into his lung and his brain, and basically he was given just a few weeks to live.
Though he lived on for some months, Bob's health declined rapidly. Chemotherapy came too late. He lost his dreadlocks and his fight against the melanoma.
He looked at himself, at his body, and he says, this is not me, Rita. But I wasn't going to give up on him. And so I tried to keep that outlook, and I'm saying, Bob, don't leave me. You can't leave me, don't. And I was saying, please, you know. And when that breath was taken, I had to rebel. I said, don't stop. Go straight to the bosom of the Father Almighty. Sit at his feet and stay there, and he will do the rest. Don't go no other way. Don't change direction. And it was like I was sending him now. I was moving the spirit, and he was moving, because Bob wasn't going to accept death. We knew it was a transition that was in God's hand. It was in the power of the Almighty. Jah had him in the region.
All pirates, yes, they rob I, sold I to the merchant ships. Minutes after
Bob Marley's funeral was held on the 21st of May, 1981. He was 36 years old.
And was made strong by the hand of the Almighty. We forward in this generation triumphantly. Won't you help to sing? another song of freedom, 'cause all I ever have, redemption songs.
He used to just see himself as a black man, a Rasta man, a ghetto youth, and somebody who had to fight his way out of it. And he really did.
The early rude boy concept, the rebel, is something that never escaped Bob, that he was very proud of, that was always part of his music.
He was football. That was his chess game, you know, scoring and dodging and faking out and making the move. And he wanted to win everything.
You learn more about him after he's gone. You won't be able to touch him. You won't be able to see him. But he's still fighting a war.
A rebel, man. You know? Who don't have no help and not take no bribe from no one to fight it single-handed with music.
Emancipate yourself from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. Have no fear for atomic energy, 'cause none of them can stop the time. How long shall they kill our prophets while we stand aside and look? Some say it's just a part of it. We've got to fulfill the book. Won't you help to sing another song of freedom? 'Cause all I ever had, redemption song, redemption song.